All right, so this is it's really kind of appropriate that I'm talking about this because this 45 years ago, Star Wars: A New Hope came out. It was my first movie in the movie theater. I was 3. Sometimes I think back to like my parents' judgment taking me to that movie when I was 3, but I liked it, I loved it, and I grew up fairly normal. So, and then I don't remember going to that movie. I do remember going to see Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So that was in 1981. So I was like 7, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I remember that movie. And if you've not seen that movie, I look back on that movie and I'm like, I think my parents maybe should have taken a 7-year-old to that movie, but they did. So the premise of that movie is Harrison Ford. Like, I had a huge crush on Harrison Ford because after watching Star Wars and then Indiana Jones, I thought Harrison Ford was the coolest. I had a huge crush on him and Henry Winkler. I would walk around all the time going, "Hey," because I loved Happy Days too. But anyways, so the premise of Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first Indiana Jones, is that Harrison Ford is an archaeologist and he's trying to find the Ark of the Covenant. And he has this nemesis, Belloc. And like the movie starts off and he gets this idol thing and he's like, "Yes, I got it." And then Belloc surrounds him and steals it. And he's like, "Ugh." So he finds the Ark of the Covenant. He gets a lead on the Ark of the Covenant. And Hitler is trying to get the Ark of the Covenant because Hitler remembers the Bible story that whoever has the Ark is victorious in battle. So Hitler wants the Ark so that he can win the war. And so this Belloc has been charged by Hitler to go find the Ark. And so Indiana Jones finds it, huzzah, and it's great, and there's all the snakes. And he's like, "Why does it have to be snakes?" And they throw him in the pit with the snakes with the girl, and he and the girl escape, but the bad guy gets the Ark, curses. And so Indiana Jones like tracks him down, and he sort of gets the Ark back, but Belloc gets it from him, and there's a scene where he's being drugged. Remember that scene where he's being drugged behind the truck? And so at the end, towards the end of the movie, Indiana Jones has basically lost. He has found them, but they have captured him. And they've got Jones and Marion, the damsel in distress, they've got them tied to this post, right, back to back. And Belloc has taken the Ark to this island because he wants to look-see first. Like, he's going to give it to Hitler, but he wants to see what's in it first. The archaeologist in him is like, "No, I want to see what's in there first." So they go to this island, and Jones and Marion are tied up, and all of the like Nazi guys and whatever are surrounding the Ark, and they're going to open it, and they're like, "Yeah." And so they open it, and all these angels come out, and they're like, "Oh, it's so beautiful." And then the angels show their power and melt their faces off, and they all die. Except for Jones and Marion, because Jones is like, "Don't look at it, don't look at it." So they hide their eyes, and they live because they're the only ones who don't get their faces melt off. And I think back to that, I was 7, like they're literally like, and their faces melt off. Like, it was graphic. But that movie, I kind of think like Hitler, I could totally see Hitler trying to find the Ark so he could use it, the real Hitler, like in real life, so he could use it in battle. Which is funny to me because if you look at the story of the Ark in the Bible, when the bad guys get the Ark, all these plagues and stuff, like they finally like give it back, like ew, 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 like we're being plagued. Hitler must have thought he was one of the good guys and that wouldn't happen to him. But so I got to think, when I'm thinking about the Ark, like when I talked about the Ark today, and of course that's the first image that comes to my mind because that was my first understanding of the Ark of the Covenant was Indiana Jones, right? But the Ark of the Covenant was a real thing. It has been missing for 2,500 years. I'm sure real archaeologists have been searching for it for 25 years. I was reading some articles. One article says they think they have found that someone has it, like someone knows where it is. And there's a monk who's only one guy who's allowed to go see it, and he goes and takes care of it and whatever. So the Ark, the story of the Ark is, so Moses frees the Israelites from Pharaoh. They're out in the desert. And he goes up onto the mountain, and he's talking to God, and God gives him these instructions, among others. There's a ton of instructions. That's why he was there for 40 days. He wasn't just chilling. He was at school. Moses was at school when he was on that mountain by God. So one of the things, one of the lessons that he has was, God said to him, "Then have them make a sanctuary for me, A sanctuary is like a place of rest. Have them make this place of rest, and I will dwell among them. Make this tabernacle and all of its furnishings exactly like the pattern I will show you. So God is saying, hey, I want to come live with my people, but I'm super holy. So I need a place to rest that's holy. Like, I want to come live among you, not up on this mountain. I want to be wherever you are, but I'm so holy. Remember, Moses had to take his shoes off at the burning bush because he was so holy. And so God's like, I want to come, but I need a really special place. You don't put God up in a Motel 6, right? You put God up in the Waldorf Astoria, okay? He doesn't get put in some like flea bait hotel or whatever. He's got to have a holy place to live. But the point is, God wants to live with them. He wanted Moses to make this so he could come and dwell and live in them and around them and be with them. So God wants a relationship with his people. But he knows he can't just come hang out in a tent because he's too holy for that. So he says, okay, there's gonna be a tent, but you need to make this really holy thing. So he decides to make this ark. He says to Moses to make this ark. He says, have them make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. Overlay it with pure gold, both inside and out, and make gold molding around it. Cast 4 rings for it and fasten them to its feet, the 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other. Then make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. Insert the poles into the rings on the side of the ark to carry it. The poles are to remain in the rings of the ark. They are not to be removed. Then put in the ark the tablets of the covenantal law, which I will give you. Make an atonement cover of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide. And make 2 cherubim out of hammered gold at the ends of the cover. Make 1 cherubim on one side and the 2nd cherubim on the other. Make the cherubim of one piece with the cover at the 2 ends. The cherubim are to have their wings spread upward, overshadowing the cover with them. The cherubim are to face each other, looking forward to the cover. Place the cover on top of the ark and put in the ark the tablets of the covenantal law that I will give you. There, above the cover, between the 2 cherubim that are over the ark of the covenantal law, I will meet with you, and I will give you all of my commands for the Israelites. That's it. So he says, make an ark. Now, when you think of an ark in the Bible, you probably think of the one with all the animals, and this one, right? So I was like, I just didn't think about the fact that there are lots of arks. So I was like, well, what is an ark? Basically, an ark is a vessel to carry things. It's basically a suitcase for things. It's basically a thing to carry stuff. But you're not going to put the law, you're not going to put the ark, like the tablets, in a knapsack and carry it around, right? So God's like, you need to make a holy place, a holy, beautiful container to carry my law in. And he's like, I'm giving you my law and you're going to carry it around. So this tells me that wherever God dwells is where his law is. So I think what makes someone a Christian is someone who, to the best of their ability, tries to keep the law. Because if you don't keep the law, then you're really not a Christian. You can know who Christ is. The devil knows who Christ is. The demons know who Christ is. But that doesn't make them Christian. What makes you a Christian, which makes you someone who follows the law, follows God, is that you follow his law. That you attempt to keep his rules. That's what sets us apart from other people. So God's saying, where my law is, where my rules are, where my word is spoken, that's where I am. Right? So he wanted to make this holy place for Moses, for the people, so he could come dwell. And where that is where his law is. So I got to look at what all was in the ark. So God told Moses to put the rules in there, to put the commandments. And these are the tablets that didn't get destroyed. If you remember when Moses came down from the mountain and they made the gold, while Moses is up doing this, they're down on the bottom of the mountain making the golden calf, right? So Moses comes down, he has a temper tantrum, he throws the tablets down, they break, he's got to go back up on the mountain, and he's got to chisel out more of them, right? So the ones that go in the ark are the ones that didn't get thrown down and broken, okay? So that's a story for another day. But so I got to look at what all was in the ark, what did they carry around? Because wherever the ark went, there was victory. They carried the ark, whenever they moved, the ark went ahead of them. Whenever they went to battle, the ark went to battle with them, and wherever the ark was, they won. So if you remember the story of Jericho, the 7 days they walked around, and on the seventh day they walked around it 7 times. They carried the ark with them as they did that. So the ark circled Jericho 7 times, and then the walls fell down. Whenever they went into a battle, they would take the ark with them. At one point, the ark gets stolen by the Philistines. And because the Philistines are like, sweet, we'll take this. Because, it was all made out of gold, right? So they're like, sweet, this thing's worth a lot of money, and that's where their God lives. Ha, 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 we'll capture their God. And then they got all these boils and plagues, and finally they're like, take it back, we don't want this thing. And they basically paid the Israelites to take it back. Okay? This thing, wherever it went, there was power. It was a holy thing filled with the power of the Lord. And so inside of it were the 10 Commandments, a jar of manna. Okay, remember manna was the stuff that fell so they could eat for 40 years. And that's a sign of God's faithfulness. These people walked around the desert for 40 years and their clothes didn't wear out. I can't even get a year's worth of my tennis shoes. And I got to buy new tennis shoes. But they wore the same sandals and the same clothes for 40 years, camping in the desert, and they didn't ever wear out. And so the manna that they keep, and the manna, which this is also interesting, manna, if you kept it overnight, rotted. If they gathered more than they needed for the day and kept it overnight, the next day it was full of maggots. Blech. But God said to put a jar of manna in there, and it's there forever. It didn't turn into maggots through God's grace. Okay? And then also was Aaron's staff, Aaron's rod. Now, I don't know if you guys remember the story of Aaron. I knew it was important, but I couldn't remember what happened there, so I went back and reread the story. So 2-minute recap of that story. Moses is in charge. He's got the 12 tribes, and each tribe has a leader. And there's basically another group of guys who are like, why do you get to be in charge? Maybe we want to be in charge. And Moses is like, because God told me to be in charge. But they're like, but we want to be in charge, and who do you think you are? And so they wanted to have a vote, basically, well, we think that we should be in charge. And so they had this rebellion, they had this coup, and they were going to overthrow Moses. Moses is like, that's a bad idea, because God put me in charge. And so they're running their mouths, as the kids say, they're running their mouths about Moses, saying he's not a good leader. And so God's like, all right, fine. I'll show them who I picked. I'll take them out. And Moses is like, wait, hold on, God. Wait. Let's come up with some other plan. And so Moses has this decree, if you want these people to be the leader, do this. And if you want these people to be the leader, do this. So they all report the next day for the sign where God's going to decide. The earth opens up, and the leaders of the rebellion fall into the earth, and then it closes. And yet there was still a rebellion. I would be like, oh, snap. Those people just fell into the earth? Okay, Moses, I'll do whatever you say. But no, they're still like, no, we want to be leaders. And he's like, so God's like, okay, you obviously did not pay attention. And so God's about to unleash a can of whoop ASS, right? God's about to show them who's really boss. And Moses and Aaron are literally running to the altar give me a goat! And they're trying to make offerings for this so that God won't kill them all. So even though they're attacking Moses and Aaron are furiously running and trying to offer offerings so that he won't kill everybody. And so God does release a plague, but not everybody dies. And so finally Moses is like, okay, God told me this is what he's going to do. Every leader, every tribe, take a staff, write your name on it. We'll put it in the room with the Ark of the Covenant overnight. And we'll see what happens in the morning. So okay. So the Levites, Aaron is a Levite. So they write Aaron's name on the staff, and all the guys put in their staff in the room with the Ark of the Covenant. And overnight, they open up the tent, and they pull the staffs out the next day. And Aaron's staff has not only, even though it's a cut piece of wood, it has not only grown leaves, but it has almonds on it. It has grown leaves and almonds. Now, fun fact about almonds, because I looked this up. Almonds are the first tree to bloom in the spring, but the last to produce fruit. So those who are farmers would know that you can't grow almonds overnight. Almond growing is a process. It's it takes a long time. So for almonds to appear overnight is truly miraculous. It's even more, it's miraculous because it's a cut branch. But it's even more miraculous that a cut branch could produce this long growing fruit. And so that is kind of they're look, God said, do you see this? And so they kept it and they put it in the Ark of the Covenant. It's a sign of the people's rebellion. So I find it interesting that this holy place, this holy container where God dwells, has his law, that makes sense. Has a sign of his faithfulness, the manna, that makes sense. And also a sign of our rebellion, which to me does not make sense. And I find that really weird, that this holy place carries a sign of our rebellion in it. And then on the top of the ark, they call it the mercy seat. And it's made out of gold. So the ark is about 4 foot by 2 1/3 feet. So it's like this big. It's pretty good size. And the lid of it had to be made out of one piece of gold, one. And the cherubim has 4 different faces. It has the face of an ox, a human, a lion, and an eagle, I think. It has 4 different faces, has wings, they have talons. Okay, cherubim are not like what you see at Valentine's Day, little cupids. They're not that. Cherubim are these mighty creatures with these big wings. And so to hammer, I think about the craftsmanship of someone to hammer 2 identical cherubim with 4 different faces out of one piece of metal. That's just crazy to me, that someone can have that kind of skill. But that was what was on the top, and it was the mercy seat. So what they would do is they would sprinkle blood to atone for their sins. And God's like, and that's where I'm going to talk to you out of. So the top of the ark is covered in God's mercy and his voice, where he speaks to us. So you've got inside it his rules, a sign of his faithfulness, a sign of our rebellion, and yet the whole thing is covered in mercy. And I just think that's a really cool picture of what it means to be holy. That holiness is following God's truth, believing in God's faithfulness, that even though we're rebellious, we are covered in his mercy. And that's what we're supposed to look like. We are supposed to look like people who keep God's rules, who believe in his faithfulness, and even though we're rebellious, we offer mercy and we are given mercy. So I encourage you this week to read the Exodus story. I'm giving you permission to skip, forgive me, Lord, the parts I call the stupid parts, where it's a list of this is how many ox and goats and sheep someone carried, and this is how many cubits tall something was, and how many cubits wide. Unless you're an architect and you really think that's cool, I'm giving you permission to skim over the boring parts and just get to the story part. But it is a cool story of God's faithfulness. Over and over and over. And constantly they're griping and complaining and rebelling. And God is constantly faithful. And God is constantly forgiving them, even though they deserve to be left in that wilderness to die. They deserve him to be like, I'm done with you stupid people. I'm out. But he doesn't do that. And I just love that about the story. So I encourage you to read, starting in Exodus, which is when Moses, the whole fair, that's when the plagues and all that stuff happened, through to basically King. It's through Numbers and Deuteronomy. That's the whole desert part of the story. So I encourage you to read that part. It's a good reminder to us of God's love and faithfulness of us, his rebellious children. And all of God's people said, Amen.